Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Earlier this year, we spoke to Paul Weingarth, the co-founder and chief executive officer of Slyp, S-L-Y-P. The company is behind the Slyp Smart Receipt, a digital receipt for retail purchases designed to replace the paper docket. Today, on Black Friday, one of the biggest shopping days of the year, Slyp has released new research with UTS in Sydney, the University of Technology Sydney, and the Minister for the Environment. It shows Australia prints more than 10.6 billion, with a B, 10.6 billion paper receipts every year. Paul Weingarth, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here again. Thanks for having me.
10.6 billion. Did that surprise you?
It did. It's a big number. It's a very big number. But then, as you look even further into, the research that was conducted by the University of Technology, there's some even more alarming stats that sit behind that. And what they looked at was the UTS folks did that world first research and looked at everything from the production, like the materials that go into producing the 10.6 billion number of paper receipts, and also the supply chain all the way through to end of life. So there were some really other more alarming stats. 96,000, just over 96,000 metric tons of carbon being used to print paper receipts. So that's the equivalent of over 20,000 cars on the road, and 104 million kilowatts of energy used to print the paper receipts, which is just under 20,000 homes to power 20,000 homes. So while it seems sort of pretty straightforward just to accept a paper receipt, it's actually a big challenge for the environment, which we're excited to, bring to the issue to the surface and also work through a roadmap to move to a digital-friendly green alternative.
Okay, so my favourite hardware store, which I'm a regular attendee at, they always give me the option and I always go for both. I think you've just changed my mind on that. Those numbers are, that's like getting 20,000 cars off the road in terms of carbon emissions if we all just said, no, send it to my phone or my email.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And I think, they also looked at consumer preferences, and there is a strong preference from Australians for a digital alternative, which is obviously, better for the environment, as we know now, because they did a comparison looking at the emissions of paper receipts versus digital receipts, and they're significantly less, obviously, on digital. But also the convenience factor for customers as well. Those paper receipts are never there when you need them, and sometimes when you need them most, they're faded or they're been, effectively unable to be used to make a claim, whether it be a return claim or a warranty or a tax claim, etc. So, digital is a much more user-friendly and consumer-friendly path, but also better for the environment.
So what's the research say in terms of the outlook for paper receipts and digital receipts? As I stand here and talk to you, Paul Weingarth from Slyp, I'm certainly not going to go and take paper receipts anymore, but what about the rest of the country? Are people shifting to digital? Where are we up to in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, it has to be a transition period. I think moving, straight from paper to digital takes time, and it's a transition and a roadmap to get there. And we're not saying, obviously, there's a number of Australians that don't have a smartphone or don't have access to internet, for example. So, we still want to provide an option and give customers choice. They do want to take paper receipts, then there should be a paper option available to them, but it's really about giving customers choice. And when there is a digital alternative, obviously we recommend that it's better for the customer and it's better for the planet. But it's also one of the other things that came out of the research, which was quite alarming, was that most paper receipts have BPA toxins embedded in them as part of the thermal paper. And so the BPA inside the paper receipt that's coated on the paper receipt is around about up to 1,000 times more dangerous than on a standard plastic bottle. And that can impact a whole range of different health issues for the humans. So for the population, so things like impacting, hormone levels and what have you, particularly dangerous for pregnant women to touch thermal paper and be exposed to BPA. So it is, as I say, it's a health concern. It's an issue for the planet, but it's also an inconvenience for customers. But where there is a need for paper receipts, we still want them to be available to Australians, but make sure that they're not coated in BPA, because by being coated in BPA, as I mentioned, they're harmful to touch, but they're also non-recyclable. So we can't recycle those receipts either. So providing merchants and retailers being able to provide non-BPA or BPA-free receipts that are okay to touch from a human's perspective, but also are able to be recycled.
Stay with me, Paul. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Paul Weingarth, co-founder and CEO of Slyp. Okay, so is there a role for government in this? Because it's very difficult to get the whole populace going on it unless government gets involved.
Yeah, well, it's actually interesting. We're definitely excited to get the support of the government in helping us sort of bring together industry. But really, I think it starts with the industry coming together and formulating a plan, because there's a number of different pieces of the puzzle. And it's, for us, obviously, we've been seeing from the rooftops about this challenge, and now we're backed up by this recent data from UTS. But, for us to tackle this on our own, obviously we're backed by the 4 major banks as shareholders and partners of Slyp, but bringing together major retailers, associations and government to support this movement away or towards a more digital and green alternative is obviously very helpful to get that support. We've seen in some other markets internationally, I'll probably name one over in France recently, part of anti-waste law. You've seen that in August this year, France had introduced a ban on the automatic printing of paper receipts. So that mindless printing of paper receipts. So, really only allowing customers to receive a paper receipt when they want one or when they request one proactively. So there are some different jurisdictions that have looked at bringing in policy to reduce the harm and the printing of paper receipts. But we don't see that as an immediate action in this market. It's really about, the industry coming together and formulating a plan and collaborating to formulate that plan to, number one, provide customers a more flexible and less harmful digital alternative. And also, really, when they are issuing paper receipts, making sure they're recyclable and they don't have those nasty BPA toxins on them.
So the retailers, where do they stand on it? Because certainly if I go to a supermarket, I end up with a very long receipt. And if I go to a hardware store, I end up with a very long receipt. You would have thought they were good places to start to say we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Woolworths are probably one that I'd call out that have been pushing their e-receipt capability hard. That's embedded as part of their loyalty program inside their mobile application. So, there's definitely, it's still fairly nascent in adoption and marketing that feature to customers, but it's something that, we feel it's an industry-wide, as I mentioned earlier, an industry-wide initiative. So we provide a flexible solution to our merchants, whether it be embedding it as a part of the merchant's own mobile application, whether it's inside the consumer's own banking app, automatically linked to the customer's bank card and sent to their banking app, or SMS alternatives as well. If they don't have a banking app and they want to receive a digital receipt, some of our merchants offer the ability for customers to have the receipt SMS to them, to their mobile phone that way. So it's about giving those customers choice, flexibility. And we are seeing, I think Australia is really far ahead when it comes to the adoption of, digital payments. And when I say that, I mean, as we're moving towards a cashless society, but we're really far behind when it's come to that last mile of the payment, which is digital receipting. So, obviously that's one of our core business and focus areas, is helping transition merchants and consumers in our network from paper to digital. But also, some merchants have their own capability that they've built out. But I think it's an industry-wide collaboration to really affect that change at mass scale.
So where do we end up in 5 years or so, Paul?
Well, I think, hopefully that 10.6 billion number that we spoke about at the top of the conversation, hopefully that's reduced significantly down to 1 or 2 billion is sort of the target. And then I think, as we evolve, today we think of receipts as just a proof of purchase, but really, it's our mission and our vision to reimagine what a digital receipt could be used for. So today, as I say, it's very much like, to use to prove that you purchased something when you want to make a return or a warranty claim or a tax or a expense claim. But really, our focus is on reimagining what a receipt could be used for. And so some of the things that we've got coming on the roadmap is really exciting, where not only are we about getting rid of paper out of circulation and ending that sort of mindless waste, but really using the receipt to power things like the circular economy, where customers will be able to go into their digital receipt, click on a certain item they might have purchased, 3 months, 6 months, a year or 2 years ago, however long it may have been, and relist a pre-loved item on a secondhand marketplace. So making that relisting of the item more seamless and more frictionless for the customer, but also providing trust when that secondhand item is sold and the buyer on the other side of that transaction wants to purchase that pre-loved item. They've got trust that they can see the original verified receipt of the purchase as well. So that's one of many, many different features and opportunities we see the receipt bring. The other space is obviously in around loyalty and really helping customers save time and money when it comes to loyalty programs and what have you, and leveraging the receipt to enable that. So there's a lot of goodness that can come off the back of moving to a digital or a smart receipt alternative.
You've convinced me. Paul, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Cheers.
That was Paul Weingarth, co-founder and CEO of Slyp, Slyp. This is the Fear and Greed business interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.